Coll Racing could be headed to Ram in the Truck Series in 2026, and rumors continue to circulate on Justin Haley's future at Spire. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brennan Poole's 2025 CW Sun scheme that we'll see next weekend at Daytona. I like the orange on this car, in all honesty. I think Alpha Prime Racing's had some really nice looking schemes this year. This one's no exception. It looks really good. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack at Daytona. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Granite Fingers 2025 WVU Grand County Mulch scheme that we'll see tonight in the truck race at Richmond. I like the scheme quite a bit, to be honest. I like the simplistic look to it. Pretty cool that West Virginia University is kind of being involved with it. It does look solid. I like the colors on it overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Riley Herbst's 2025 Chumba Casino scheme that we'll see next weekend at Daytona. Scheme looks alright in my opinion. I like the American look to it. I like some of the colors on it overall, and pretty cool to see Chumba Casino is changing up some of their schemes for this weekend. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Reddick's 2025 McDonald Land scheme that I believe we're going to see next weekend at Daytona. This one is very interesting to me. I like the look of it for sure. I like the blue look. I like a lot of the sponsorship placement they have on the car. I think it looks solid. There's some good things about it for sure. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack next weekend at Daytona. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Gateway Xfinity Series race, as they have a title sponsor for the event. The race is going to be called the New Way 200. New Way is a construction-based company out of the St. Louis area, so it's kind of cool to see them. They're kind of from the area, and it's cool to see them getting the chance and opportunity. Blue Hog is also going to be associated with the sponsorship for this event as well, so really good to see the Xfinity Series race having an official sponsor for the event. I thought it'd be something like Bomarito would maybe sponsor it, but pretty cool the New Way will sponsor the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Gateway. Really exciting stuff in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the San Diego Cup race, as they have a title sponsor for the event. The race is going to be called the Andrew Roll 250. Andrew Roll is based off of a company, I'm pretty sure, in Defense Force, and is a major part of the San Diego's Naval Base Coronado area. And I think it's cool that Andrew Roll is coming in to sponsor the event, especially with the 250th anniversary. Cool to see Andrew Roll coming in and sponsoring the event. Good to see them coming in and getting involved. In my honest opinion, pretty exciting stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Richmond Purses. So every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockets puts out the purse money for the event. And the corner buy for the Cup race is $9,797,935, and for the Truck race is $782,900. Obviously, that money for the Cup Series is down because of the situation with the situation of the charter agreement, what's going on with 2011 and Spire Motorsports. We don't know if they're going to get their going to win their upcoming preliminary injunction, which that hearing I believe is coming up very soon, if I'm not mistaken. And the Truck Series, no shock and surprise, they're having issues of funding at this point. I think the Truck Series needs to have an increase in the purse money because the series is uncertain how long the series is going to last at this rate, but at least for Cup there's some decent money for this weekend, but I do wish at least the Truck Series had a little bit of increase in purse money, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing, with Shaven Gisbergen winning his 4th NASCAR Cup Series race of 2025 this past weekend at Watkins, Glen. That is now 5 wins for Trackhouse Racing in the 2025 season. That is now a record for the organization for most wins they've had in a single year. I believe the prior record was 4, if I'm not mistaken, because I believe they had a couple with Chastain. I think 2023 they had, I believe, 2 or 3 wins, I'm pretty sure. So they are continuing to get a lot of wins in the Cup Series at this point, especially how many road courses are on the schedule right now. You're very likely going to see that number continue to be broken because of how good Trackhouse Racing has been when it comes to these road courses, and I think they're going to continue winning a lot of races going forward in the future. So nonetheless, really good to see them continue to break their own records. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a 10-win season in the future. We'll see what happens for Trackhouse Racing going forward and in the future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Richmond Raceway. As was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, that it sounds like, according to him, the Cup Series race at Richmond is almost sold out for tomorrow night's NASCAR Cup Series Cookout 400. They haven't officially sold out. I think there's some stuff on Ticketmaster, some of the ticket companies that I saw. There's still some seats that are still available at this point. So if you're going out to the race and you haven't gotten your tickets, you still have a chance and opportunity to walk up and get your tickets for the event. But obviously, like a race at Richmond, Richmond, for example, the track only holds about 50,000 seats. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about the Brickyard not having a ton of people inside, but you gotta remember there's still like 70 or 75,000 that showed up, which is still more than a track like Richmond or Phoenix at this point. But we'll probably get an announcement here at some point in the coming days. It could be announced at some point today. I'm pretty sure that it might get confirmed, but I would expect that the Cup race will sell out here in the not-so-distant future. We've been seeing a lot of sellouts this year, which is really good for TV and all that stuff. Good to see that at least it looks like the Cup Series race will sell out for this weekend's race at Richmond Raceway. Really good stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about points scored in the last 10 races in the NASCAR Cup Series. As the NASCAR Insights account posted a very interesting stat about the top 10 point scorers in the last 10 races. And so far right now, Chase Briscoe has scored 332 points. Then below him is Chase Elliott, who has scored 328 points. Then Chris Buescher has scored 321. One name I did not see on the top 10 is Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson has not had a lot of consistency as of late and hasn't even been really scoring a lot of stage points also at this particular moment. But for Chase Briscoe, there's been a lot of consistency. He's only had one finish outside the top 5 in the last 5 races, and I think there's a really good chance that he's going to roll out with a couple wins before the end of the season because I like the speed of the 19 car currently at the moment. They've been a lot quicker, they've been a lot stronger, and I think that pace and speed is going to continue long-term into the foreseeable future of what they've got at this point. Again, I think Briscoe's a sleeper for the championship as well. I like what I'm seeing from the team and program, and I think that's going to continue down the road. Good to see that Briscoe's having a solid year. He's been figuring it out really, really quickly, and I think that this is going to continue going forward into the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Norm Benning. As it was announced yesterday that Norm Benning has unfortunately withdrawn from the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Richmond and will not be running tonight's Truck Series race at Richmond. Norm Benning was originally, like I said, scheduled to run this race. He's made a couple starts so far in the Truck Series in 2025. And unfortunately this year, unlike prior years where I felt like there was some improvement for Norm, there really has been no speed and no luck for the number 6 team. They just really haven't been up to speed at all in any way, shape, or form. They had troubles at Pocono being up front, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why, because they just have had a lot of struggles with speed. Norm Benning is someone that you don't expect to be a major factor, and because of how slow he's been at times, he's been forced to get off the racetrack because there's just no pace and speed from the number 6 truck in any way, shape, or form right now, and I'm not sure how much longer Norm Benning is going to keep racing in the sport. Norm is in his early 70s. He's one of the oldest drivers racing in the sport currently at the moment. He's been around for many, many years. I would love to see Norm Benning continue racing into the sport into the future, but I'm not sure how much longer he is going to race. Are people going to let him continue racing? I think that's a big question at this point that we're going to have to wait for as time goes on, but as of now, he will not run the Truck Series race at this weekend's race at Richmond. We'll see what other race he runs in the future, but we don't know what his schedule will be for the remainder of 2025. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Nick Lights. As there was a report by Declan Wayman yesterday that Nick Lights will drive the 02 for Young's Motorsports in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this weekend at Richmond Raceway. Nick Lights, of course, has been making a lot of starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series over the course of the last couple of years for DGM Racing and also for SS Greenlight Racing as well. I think Nick Lights is honestly a very underrated driver. He's not someone that I expect to go out there and contend in this equipment, but we have seen drivers who can get behind the wheel of this equipment and actually form pretty well. We saw Cade Honeycutt get behind the wheel of the 02 truck past weekend at Watkins Glen, and he had a pretty solid and good performance in that truck before mechanical gremlins came into play. That's the one thing I worry about, though, with Nick, because he is a former driver with Young's Motorsports back, I believe, in 2022 and 2023, and the equipment isn't the top level stuff, so I don't expect Nick Lights to be a major factor, a contender in any way, shape, or form, but I could see him doing decent. We'll see if he can have a good run. I'd love to see him show some really good stuff this weekend at the track. I'd love to see that organization pop up and do really well. We'll see what happens going forward for him, but as of right now, at the moment, we'll see what he can do, and we'll see if they can bring some solid pace and some really good speed this weekend in the Truck Series race at Richmond Raceway with the team. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Logan Sargent. As it was reported by, I believe, Sports Car 365 earlier today, that Logan Sargent will be back in racing for the first time in 2025 in a while, as he's back in the United States racing in IMSA. He will drive for PR1 Mathiasen and LMP2 in the race at Road Atlanta, the Petit Le Mans. I think there's another race he also has scheduled for the end of this year as well. Logan Sargent, of course, was a former driver in Formula 1 in 2024, but lost his ride, I believe, at the end of the season, and generally struggled in Formula 1, and he's been racing in the European Le Mans Series throughout the years so far, and now he's back in the United States for the first time. I want to see Logan have a lot of success. I think Logan does have talent. I know he wasn't amazing in Formula 1 with only one time where he actually scored points in the season, but I really would love to see Logan have a solid chance and opportunity to be very, very competitive regardless of what series he enters, because I think that's the most important thing. If you give the guy the experience and a chance and an opportunity to race, I think he probably can provide for you. And Pierre-Roy Mathiasen, they're a really solid team, and I think LMP2, while yes, they only have one major chassis, that being the Orca chassis, I think for him getting that opportunity to race for an organization, I think is certainly very important for him. And then it also can be something that can build Logan Sargent's overall confidence as well, because that's one thing I think he's lost as a driver, is that confidence he knows he can race. So I really hope for Logan he can do a good job. I hope he has the pace and speed to contend. Again, Pierre-Roy Mathiasen has been fast this year in IMSA. They've been fast for many, many years. We'll see if the team can be a factor. I think he's got a solid chance and a strong opportunity, though, to be really competitive in the LMP2 class in the final couple races of the IMSA season in 2025 with this team. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about DGM Racing at Daytona. As it was announced yesterday early morning that they have officially announced their lineup for their two of their three cars they're going to run in the event at Daytona. So Josh Bilicki is going to drive the number 91 for next weekend at Daytona, and then Natalie Decker will be behind the wheel of the number 92 car. This will be the first time that Natalie Decker has raced in 2025, and she will be looking to make some history there as she looks to run very, very well in the race at Daytona. Now, Natalie Decker is someone who I'm not a very high on when it comes to talent. I think, yes, she will help when it comes to sponsorship side of things, and I know Natalie's been doing what she's been wanting to do over the last year or so, but there's really not many reasons why she should be racing in the first place. I just worry that she may end up crashing. Say what you want to say, though, unlike Hailie Deegan, she actually led laps in races at Daytona and Talladega, so that's a positive for her at this point, and she does have prior experience racing in Xfinity. I hope both drivers can run very well. For Josh Bilicki, he's a solid driver. He can get the best out of equipment for sure, and I've seen him do really good things in underfront equipment, and when he's had good equipment, like the Joe Gibbs Racing number 19 car 2024, he ran really well in the couple races that he ran, and I think that he is a overall solid and a pretty good driver. So I hope he can do a really, really good job. Hope both can have a lot of success. I'm just not sure about Natalie Decker being a factor in any way, shape, or form. We'll see how they can do this next weekend at Daytona. It's going to be a very stacked field. Obviously, Austin Hill is racing, which I'm a little worried about Austin Hill being in the field next weekend, but he might, because I'm worried he might cause some incidents of carnage. Maybe he won't. Who knows at this point? But nonetheless, we will see both these drivers get the chance and opportunity to race once again. Hopefully, both can have success and do really well in the Craftsman Truck Series race coming up. Not Craftsman Truck Series race, the Xfinity Series race coming up at Daytona. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the number 16 truck for Minnelli Hilman Racing. As Bob Pockers reported yesterday that Minnelli Hilman Racing and the number 16 truck have officially secured the points from the number 17 for Spire Motorsports for the rest of the 2025 season. Remember, the 77 owners' points have transferred from the 07 owners' points that came from that organization transferred over to the number 77. And of course, the 07 truck no longer exists in the Craftsman Truck Series currently at the moment. This will ensure that Christian Eckes will make the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, which, let's be real, some of the news we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit. He wasn't going to miss regardless, plus Christian Eckes has been very, very good. He's also supposed to run the Truck Series race in New Hampshire in a couple weeks from now, and I expect him to be a major factor in that event as well, because of course he's had a lot of success with Minnelli Hilman Racing over the course of the last couple of years, and probably honestly should have had a really good chance to win the championship and just missed out on winning his first title last year in trucks. He's also of course struggled in the Xfinity Series this year because Coll Racing just hasn't really had the pace and speed, and there's been a lot of struggles for that program. But I think he's going to have a solid chance and opportunity to run very, very well this weekend. I expect him to be really good, and at least we know some of the points transfers is probably also going to change as time goes on with some of the future points transfers that we're going to see in truck competitions. I expect a lot of changes coming up here very, very soon as we close out the end of the year. And then going into next year, some more major points transfers are going to be announced. I think some of those will be coming out here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Teresa Earnhardt. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today, the developers have officially withdrawn plans to rebuild a multi-billion-dollar data center in Mooresville, North Carolina, and the Earnhardt land will be staying for now at this point in the same area. Now, Breaker kind of broke this down a little bit on his channel talking about this. Teresa Earnhardt has been truly trying to build up this data center. She, of course, was trying to get as much money as possible. I think the company's name is Tract. I'm pretty sure that was trying to build this data center, but there's a couple reasons why they deny this. Number one, they're not even sure exactly what was supposed to be going in the first place. They've tried to communicate that with Teresa and her team, and they've never really been able to get a response back on that front. They also don't want to disturb the peace, because what could happen here is a lot of residential areas can be built up, and a lot of people from the Mooresville, North Carolina area do not want to see the land built up with residential areas. They want the area to prosper, when basically the area to not to be in any danger in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's a really good decision for Mooresville, North Carolina. Say what you want to say about the government, among other things. I think when a government agency knows that things are a little bit off with the situation, because this whole thing has been off from the get-go when it was announced that this was going to be going on. I feel like there was a lot of things that were just certainly wrong about this, and I'm glad to see that at least some people can see the same thing that I have been seeing for quite some time. So we'll see what happens going forward into the future. Again, I think that this will not be the last time we hear something about this. I guarantee you that Teresa Earnhardt is going to try to do what she can to try to get that land built up. Again, she wants a lot of money. She's, of course, been involved in lawsuits with other people at this point, like Carrie in the past, and a lot of people don't really want to associate with her at this point that are from the area of Mooresville. They're kind of tired of dealing with her and all the BS that's been around her at this point. So I really am glad to see that at least some people have come to their senses and made the right decision at this point. We'll see what it comes down to, and we'll see what happens in the future. But as of now, it's a win for the people in Mooresville, North Carolina. I'm glad to see it is a win for them, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR 25 once again. Now, there's been more updates in regards to NASCAR 25 over the course of the last couple days. Many of you have probably seen it at this point, but many big creators in the motorsport and NASCAR world were invited out to Charlotte Motor Speedway to come and test and play the game. Jarrett Lundberg, aka the Iceberg, was out there. I believe Matt Malone, I saw, was out there as well. And Jeff Favani now were among many people. I think Komodo Gaming as well was also out there to test out the game. From what a lot of them have said, they definitely are very intrigued, and there's some excitement around NASCAR 25 for sure. And judging by some of the comments that they have had, I'm definitely a little more excited about the game for sure. And also some of the screenshots that have been seen and released as well. I got to say, some of the screenshots and some of the gameplay footage, among other things we've seen from like 2311 Racing, among others, I got to say, I'm definitely becoming a little bit more excited about what exactly the game is going to be like. Now, do I think the game is absolutely going to be perfect? No. They've even admitted, and Jared mentioned in his video, that they're still working on some of the AI things, among other things, but there's definitely some positives from what a lot of people are saying. Now, I'm going to make this very, very clear. Make sure the gameplay comes out. We've seen some of the gameplay and seen some of the screenshots of the gameplay, but we haven't seen the gameplay trailer at this point. The gameplay trailer is expected to be released around Bristol weekend from what I know, so about a month from now, the gameplay trailer should end up coming out, which I think that's going to be really exciting what we get from that gameplay trailer. But from what I'm seeing at this point, I'm definitely becoming a little bit more excited about the game, though I will say I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think that there is definitely some hope that this game will be good, and I'm really hoping we can get a good game, because we really have not had a good game in a long time in the NASCAR space. I say NASCAR Inside Line was probably the last true good game that NASCAR's had in a while, so I really hope we can get a good game, and I really like what I'm seeing from NASCAR 25. I think iRacing's been doing a really good job of some of the things they've been doing. Do I still think there really aren't any red flags from what I can tell? There's not things turning me off. There's some things I still got to work on, but I'm definitely excited more and more for the game, and as more gets revealed, I'm becoming more excited about it, and I'm definitely cautiously optimistic that this game may end up being good for NASCAR. Hopefully can be a really, really good game. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Justin Marks. As Justin Marks on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio a couple days ago, I believe it back was on Tuesday or Wednesday, and he spoke about the incident between Connor Zilch and Shane Van Gisbergen at Watkins Glen. Now we'll talk about celebrations here in just a short little bit. In the future, those in NASCAR after what happened with Connor Zilch. But if you watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Watkins Glen, Shane Van Gisbergen was holding up Connor Zilch near the middle to end portion of the race at around 20 25 laps to go. Shane Gisbergen was clearly on older tires, and Connor Zolch had a much faster car on the field than Shane Gisbergen at that point. He tried to get by him multiple times, was doing it pretty cleanly for a little bit, but couldn't get by him. Then with 18 laps to go in the race, Connor Zolch made a move to the outside, went way wide across the racetrack, then came back across the track and got into Shane Gisbergen, and Shane Gisbergen crashed really, really hard into the inside tire barrier, and his day would be over while Connor Zolch would get the lead and go on to eventually win the race while chaos is happening behind him near the end of that after Austin Hill caused an incident and crash, which, by the way, no penalty for Austin Hill after that incident, which I think was the right call. Justin Marks basically said that they raced really, really hard. They're racing for the win, and there's really no tension between both these guys, and it's already been resolved at this point. I think that's the best thing you have to look at. These two were racing really hard for a win. They're two of the best road course racers, if not the two best road racers currently at the moment in NASCAR. Both been winning all the road course races so far this year outside of the Mexico race, which another Trackhouse guy in Daniel Suarez picked up the win there, which his future is still unknown at this point. But to me, I don't think this really should have been as big of a deal as some made it. I think that Connor just got a little bit misjudgment there maybe, but also SVG did put a little bit of a block, but he's also being aggressive trying to hang on to his position. He's not going to give up the position to try to hang on to it at that point. So to me, I think it's more of a racing deal than anything else. I get why some fans got upset by Connor being over aggressive, but at the same time, I don't think it was as bad as some made it out to be. I think it's just a racing deal, and I'm glad to see Justin and the team are handling it and are not going to stop them racing each other, because these two are going to be racing each other on road courses for many years to come going forward into the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jack Wood. Now, I did a video covering the story on the channel earlier today, but it was announced earlier today that Jack Wood will miss the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race later tonight at Richmond Raceway due to an injury suffered at Watkins Glen. On lap 37 of the Craftsman Truck Series race at Watkins Glen, Jack Wood was running in the middle to back of the pack, wasn't really up front to begin with, and unfortunately had a flat left front tire going up the banking into the S's, going up toward the bus stop. He had a flat left front tire and hit the inside wall very ferociously and really hard, and came back across the racetrack and then hit the outside wall. We weren't exactly sure how hard the hit was, but we don't know exactly how the extent of the injuries are for Jack Wood. The most important thing for Jack Wood currently at the moment is that he gets better and gets back to the racetrack as soon as possible. The good news for the Jack Wood fans is that Jack Wood does not have to race next week at Daytona, because the Truck Series doesn't go to Daytona twice. There is a race at Darlington for the Craftsman Truck Series. I would have to think, and again, what they mentioned in the statement, it's a precautionary measure, so probably something very similar happened to Connor Zolch when he had his back injury. He missed the race at Texas, and then he came back and started dominating in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and had 10 or 11 consecutive top fives before the unfortunate injury that took place for him. So I do expect that Jack Wood will likely get back behind the wheel really soon. Again, it's just a precautionary measure. If he has another big wreck and incident, it could end up being very, very serious. So hopefully he can have a speedy recovery and get back on the racetrack soon. I do think he'll race here in the not so distant future. But for Jack, I don't know exactly how bad the injuries are for him. Hopefully he can get back to the racetrack as soon as possible and race once again. We'll see what happens, and we'll see how long it takes for him to get back. I think he'll be racing soon, but who knows when he'll be exactly racing here really, really soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing lawsuit. As I think can't remember exactly who posted an update on the Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing lawsuit, but they had their hearing earlier this week in regards to the preliminary injunction. So Legacy Motor Club filed a preliminary injunction against Rick Ware Racing and TJ Pusher, so Rick Ware Racing could not sell that charter, which is charter number 27, which currently is being leased to RFK Racing at this point. They basically are wanting that charter for the 2026 season. The judge in this case, when they heard all the filings, did say that he will have a decision by August 22nd. So a week from today, we'll file an official notice. I would not be surprised if the decision is made sooner at this point, considering that he's probably going to want to have the decision here made very, very soon. If Legacy Motor Club does, because this does not have a full effect on the lawsuit, because there still is a lawsuit going on at this point. Basically, there's been a lot of claims out there. Legacy Motor Club basically said that TJ Pusher co-inspired with Rick Ware Racing to try to basically get the team bought, so that because basically TJ Pusher and the people in Rick Ware were told not to sell the organization and team. Meanwhile, they're trying to sell the team over to TJ Pusher, who is involved in the original purchase of that charter in the first place. Make of that what you will. At this point, when I look at this lawsuit between Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware, I think it's pretty much a slam dunk at this point. I think Legacy Motor Club is likely going to win this lawsuit and get their charter. If it's in writing and you're having evidence come out showing that Rick Ware was violating certain things and that team was violating certain guidelines that were told not to violate, that gives them, I think, an upper hand advantage at this point. If they do get that third charter next year, I would have to think that Jesse Love is a potential candidate for that third seat. And I also think that Jimmy Johnson will make some starts. It could be a rotation thing where you see Jesse Love run a lot of races in 2025, while Jimmy Johnson may also race in some races next year as well. Someone mentioned Corey Heim being a potential candidate possibility. Corey Heim, I don't expect to go over to Legacy Motor Club next year in the third car. Again, Jesse Love is a front runner for that at this point. We'll have to kind of wait and see what happens in regards to that into the future, and we'll see what kind of plays out with this suit. But unlike the current NASCAR lawsuit that's going on, I think this lawsuit is a lot more cut and dry on who I think is more likely going to win this lawsuit, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stuart Fzen. As it was announced earlier this evening that Stuart Fzen has confirmed he will not seek a playoff waiver and will not compete in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series playoffs in 2025. He says his health is the most important thing and getting back to the racetrack as soon as possible. He did say, though, he will compete for the Owner's Points playoffs in the number 52 truck, which Caden Honeycutt will be piloting the number 52 truck for the 2025 season for the remainder of the year. As of course, he's no longer at Niss Motorsports. He'll drive the 52 for the remainder of the season. This is pretty much what I expected at this point. This is kind of very similar to what happened with Kurt Busch. Remember, Kurt Busch got injured during a qualifying session at Pocono. He had made it to the final round of qualifying, and unfortunately, due to the next-gen car being stiff at the time, he backed it in the outside wall and then missed the rest of the season, and then he took away his playoff eligibility on his own. After winning the race at Kansas, he took away the playoff eligibility and decided not to run because he needed to recover from the concussion issues that he had suffered. I think this is a right and only correct decision at this point, which would mean a couple guys will be in playoff contention. Jake Garcia, I believe, moves into the playoffs, so there are two Tricon trucks in, and Gio Rosario and I believe Ben Rhodes also to have a chance to make the playoffs this year at this point. I know some are kind of like, why didn't he go for it? They could have had 10 or 11 trucks. Well, I get that he probably wanted to be in top 10 in points, but I think for the integrity, among other things, I think he's making the right decision here. And I think this absolutely is the right call. Again, the most important thing for Stuart Fzen, who left the hospital not too long ago, the most important thing for Stuart Fzen is to not fully focus 100% on racing, but focus on trying to spend time with his family and get better so he can get back to the racetrack as soon as possible. I think that's the most important thing for Stuart, and that's got to be the thing that's on his mind at this point. I really hope he can get back to the racetrack as soon as possible. I expect he probably will be around the track, but not racing, which isn't shocking and surprising. So we'll see what happens in the future, but again, I'm not surprised to see this coming out, and I'm glad they made a statement that NASCAR said they would have a decision by Friday morning. We now know what the decision is, and I think they're making the right decision overall when it comes to playoff waiver not being granted for Stuart Fzen. I think this absolutely is the right call from the team to go ahead and just say, you know what, we're not going to screw this up. We're just going to go ahead and not grant a playoff waiver, and we're going to decide we're not going to go and get a playoff waiver at this point, which is the right call in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about celebrations in NASCAR. So we all know what happened with Connor Zilisch. It was the biggest story coming out of the weekend outside of Shane Van Gisbergen's dominance in the NASCAR Cup Series race. Connor Zilisch basically won the Xfinity Series race at Watkins Glen, got up on top of the car, his foot got caught in the window netting, and he tripped and unfortunately broke his collarbone. Now, Connor Zilisch did have surgery very recently on that, and we don't know exactly when he'll be back behind the wheel of the race car once again, but judging by how young he is, I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, he'll probably miss Daytona at this point, but I also think that he'll probably run Portland or a couple races down the road, because I think Connor's still going to want to race once again with how strong he's been, but it all depends on what the doctors want to do. There was a lot of conversation, though, around celebrations, whether NASCAR was going to ban celebrations of people getting on top of the car because of him tripping over. Well, NASCAR confirmed on Holler Talk that they are not going to be banning celebrations in NASCAR going forward into the future. They did advise the teams, though, that instead of having the window net out of the car, they probably should put the window net inside the car so something like this never happens again. I think that this is absolutely the right call, and here's why. This was a very freak accident. I don't think I've ever seen a driver. We've seen drivers fall off the car before, right? We saw Cole Custer was chugging 2 beers at Kentucky. I think it was back in 2019. And he fell off the car, but he fell on his butt. But this situation, Connor Zilch fell on his head and fell on his collarbone, and we all were really worried that he was going to have concussions, among other things, and be out for a lot longer. But for Connor, it was just a freak accident. He got water in his face. There was a lot of that sponsorship stuff. It had been a long day at that point. The race went a lot longer than it should. It was the second longest race, longer than the Cup Series race was. So when these drivers sit in these cars for quite some time, they did sometimes lose focus, among other things, even though Connor kept focus and ended up going on and picking up the win in victory, which he absolutely earned. I'm glad to see NASCAR, though, and I think this is the right call at this point. I don't think NASCAR needed to ban celebrations just because of a freak accident, because what happened here, like I said, was a freak accident for Connor. I don't think that we all kind of thought that Connor Zilch was going to fall, because now 2 injuries that Connor Zilch has suffered. Of course, he had that back injury after Talladega, which I mentioned not too long ago. And we all know, of course, he's going to be full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series next year with Trackhouse Racing. But I think what happened here was just a freak accident at this point, and I don't think that there would need to be any changes just because of an unfortunate freak accident that happened, because it hasn't happened before at this point. So I'm glad NASCAR is making the right call. I think it was the right decision by NASCAR to not go ahead and ban the post-race celebrations. I think people will be more careful. Teams might make decisions. I would expect some teams are going to probably tell their drivers to be a little more careful, like Trackhouse Racing, for example. Shaman Gisbergen didn't jump up on top of the car initially. He got out of the car and didn't really jump on top of it. He kind of just a little more careful after what happened. So what happened there was a freak accident, but I'm glad to see NASCAR saying, you know what, this was just an unfortunate situation that happened, and I'm glad to see NASCAR not stepping in and basically banning this kind of stuff. Celebrations are important to sport as it is. I don't think banning them would have been the right call. Glad to see NASCAR agrees with me and is not banning post-race celebrations. I think this is a good decision on NASCAR's part, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Niss Motorsports. As later today, around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Niss Motorsports has an announcement scheduled. And apparently, according to what some people are saying, this could be definitely a pretty big announcement. Now, this announcement was only announced a couple days ago, so I'm not exactly sure what this announcement could be. There have been a few theories out there, 2 or 3 theories that I've seen so far this year. One of the theories is that Niss Motorsports could be shutting down their NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series program. There's still some uncertainty around the Niss Motorsports team for 2026, but I don't think Niss Motorsports is going to be shutting down, so I don't think this is what it is going to be. One of the theories that I've seen is Dodge. Some people think that they're going to be part of the Dodge and Ram program. Now, we'll talk about a team that's likely going to be associated with the Dodge and Ram program in 2026 near the end of this episode. But one reason why I'm pushing back against this one, while I think some are definitely saying it, the reason I don't think that Niss Motorsports is going to be the team is because Cody Efaw and the people from Niss Motorsports went on Sirius and NASCAR Radio not even a month ago and basically said this is not true in any way, shape, or form. TobyChristie.com and them got a statement saying that we're going to be staying with Chevrolet for many, many years to come, because I remember Niss Motorsports being brought up as a major, major candidate and possibility of going to Ram in 2026. They were one of the front runners to switch over at that point. But then, because of Ross Chastain Association and Trackhouse Racing being rumored to be one of the teams in Cup that could down the road have a program with the Dodge and Ram program. But Niss Motorsports, like I said, has come out and said, no, we are not playing the switch manufacturers and we're staying with Chevrolet. So I don't think that is what it's going to be. Some have thought maybe they're going to talk to Andres about him signing with the team, maybe a sponsorship announcement, but it's weird because, yeah, Junior Motorsports, they had this sponsor announcement at a press conference, which I really didn't understand because they could have just announced that on like a Friday. They didn't need a whole press conference for a sponsor coming in. I get the sponsor was a really big deal for them to come in and sponsor quite a bit. I think it was Carolina Carports, I'm pretty sure, but they didn't need that. One of the other theories that I've seen, I think a lot of people are leaning toward this, is Connor Jones is going to get announced full-time to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in Nice in 2026. If it is true that Connor Jones is full-time next year in truck competition with Niss Motorsports, I'm going to be really disappointed in this team, because there is a potential possibility the lineup that Niss could have next year, if Connor Jones ends up going full-time, is Connor Jones in the 41, Matt Mills in the 42, and Andres Perez in the 44 or the 45. Ouch. That is a very weak lineup, and one of the weakest lineups I think Niss has had in quite some time, probably since their 2021 lineup outside of Carson Ospar, who drove for the team, because Carson Ospar propped this team up. Guys like Ross Chastain, Katie Honeycutt propped them up. I am not a fan of Connor Jones, Connor Jones is not good in any way, shape, or form, and he is one of the worst drivers that I think we have seen race in the sport in quite some time. I get that Connor Jones is 19 years old, and yes, he's won some car tour races, but the way he's handled himself, the way he's handled his character, his attitude, I just don't rate the guy at all. I don't think he's good. I think he's done a terrible job so far in his career. I really wish he could do good, but like I said, I just don't rate Connor Jones. And if this is who I think, which I think it could be, if it is Connor Jones full-time in truck with Niss, I'm going to be disappointed in the program. I get he brings a lot of funding and sponsorship to the table, but to me, this would be a massive downgrade from Caden Honeycutt, even a downgrade from Andres at this point, and I think it'd be a really awful and terrible decision if that's who is behind the wheel. I do have a worry, though, that is who it's going to be, and if it's truly him, I'm going to be disappointed and upset if he's behind the wheel. We'll see what the announcement is from Niss, and if it's a big enough deal, we'll talk about it on the channel. I hope it's not him, but I worry that it'll be him, and I'll be disappointed, probably angry if he's full-time in the Truck Series in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Ospar. Now, there's been a lot of conversation and talk around Carson Ospar over the last week because Carson Ospar made a lot of drivers upset and mad at Watkins Glen. First, Brad Keselowski during qualifying apparently got upset because Carson Ospar might have impeded Brad Keselowski during qualifying. Brad got out of his car and ran over to Carson Ospar and basically was chewing out the organization and team. And apparently Spire kind of clapped back and said, "Why are you mad at us? You impeded our qualifying lap." Then he had the Michael McDowell incident where Carson Ospar got spun by Michael McDowell, then got moved up the racetrack by McDowell as well. And then he had the radio communication where Carson was upset and angry. And then he had the Zane Smith communication that was coming out at this point. Well, Carson Ospar, during media availabilities earlier this week, he basically said he has not spoken to Michael McDowell since the incident took place on the racetrack there, and basically kind of confirmed that there might be a little bit of bad blood between both of those guys. He probably will speak to Michael McDowell sometime this weekend when we get to the racetrack, probably sometime today, because of course Cup qualifying will be taking place later today. But he says he hasn't spoken to McDowell since the incident. That surprises me, but also Carson Ospar is a guy that's not really a big fan of the phone calls. He kind of revealed that not too long ago, so that doesn't surprise me or shock me in some way, shape, or form. He still kind of defends himself in the situation from qualifying as well with Brad Keselowski, where he basically said that Brad was more at fault than I was at fault for the incident, and it's a he said, she said kind of thing, where he said that Brad impeded our qualifying lap, and it wasn't the other way around. Now, Zane Smith, Carson talked about that as well and said, yeah, I owe Zane Smith a lot for basically not to wreck him and run into him. The reason he went to the window net and basically went into Zane Smith's window was telling him, hey, man, I'm going to be a lot nicer to you on the racetrack. I'm going to give you a lot more positions going forward, because we all remember that Ryan Burgundy went up to Carson Ospar after the Cup Series race at Iowa, and that team, after a lot of bad runs for the organization, a lot of mistakes made by him recently, and a lot of just unfortunates for the team, they were really upset and angry at Carson, and Ryan Burgundy might have said something that he probably regrets at this point, but I think for Ospar, when you're making everybody mad and upset, I think this is a wake-up call for Carson. Is Carson going to wake up from something like this? Probably not, at least as of now, but if you keep making people mad and angry in this industry, again, I like Carson's personality, don't get me wrong, but if you make people, and most people especially, angry and upset by some of the antics you're pulling out on the racetrack, I think that then is very, very concerning, and I'm worried for Carson long-term because, well, I think he's got a long-term home with Spire right now. I know Hendrick is high on Carson Ospar with how good he's been with that organization, so you can't deny that even though he pissed a lot of drivers off, the guy can drive a race car, but Ryan Blaney's been frustrated with him. Ross Chastain, his mentor, has been frustrated with him at times. Kyle Busch, we know, has been really upset with Carson for many, many years, and other drivers have just been frustrated and have gotten tired. Even guys like Connor Zillage, even Shane Van Gisbergen at times has been frustrated with him. I think Bubba Wallace has been frustrated with Carson at points because some of the over-aggressive driving that has really affected a lot of those drivers on the track. So to me, I think Carson, it's crazy how many people are upset with Carson at this point. Kind of crazy that he kind of talked about this and wild stuff coming out from this weekend's media availabilities, and some drivers probably were responding to it in the not-so-distant future to Carson's comments. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Petty. So earlier this week, Kyle Petty drew a lot of criticism for comments he made on Performance Racing Network about the next-gen car, where he basically told everybody that the racing is better now. He basically said that we have to move on with the times and we can't go back to the old antique racing going after Dale Jr. and basically saying that you have to like it. If you don't like it, that's not something that we agree with at this point, is quintessentially what he said. Now, Kyle Petty obviously heard a lot of fans' opinions And he says that the fans have not changed his opinion on how he feels about the car. He says that we're having a lot of close finishes. We're having a lot closer racing. And we're having a lot of better racing on the racetrack at this point because the racing's different now than it is back then. And yeah, I'll agree with Kyle Petty, the racing is different now than it was back then, but it doesn't mean the racing is good. Yes, we've had some close finishes with the next-gen car, but guess what? We had close finishes in the Gen 6 era. We have close finishes in the car tomorrow. The 2007 Bristol race comes to mind, and Martinsville comes to mind that same year. The Gen 4 had many close finishes and great racing. Many people are criticizing this car because the racing product in the next-gen car is just not been very, very good, in my opinion. We haven't, at least on the shorter ovals. There's 3 out of 4 types of tracks that this car has really suffered at. The short tracks, some of the best racing in the country, has not been good with this next-gen car. And while Xfinity sometimes turns to a crapshoot, the racing there, when it doesn't turn to crapshoot, is generally really, really good. Same with the Truck Series as well. The road course racing, the Xfinity Series puts on banger after banger after banger. The Cup Series product, like what we saw at Watkins Glen, while it wasn't the worst road course race of all time, I think that 2023 Watkins Glen race takes the cake for maybe the worst road course race ever. This race still was not very good. Yes, you had a lot of different passing, but the racing wasn't good throughout the whole event, and when everyone was on equal tires, no one passed because you had to have a different tire to get the opportunity to pass. And in the super speedways, it's just feel safe, and I think a lot of people, including myself, has just been fed up and frustrated with the racing product in the sport because they're not making the necessary changes. They made no changes to the car from last year to this year. There's got to be big changes. Obviously, there's talk about increasing horsepower currently at the moment, but some have said that increasing horsepower is not going to make the racing product better with this car, so I really don't know what the solution is currently at the moment. But I get that Kyle Petty is kind of talking about it, and I will give Kyle Petty credit. He's standing by his opinion. Even if I don't agree with it, I'll respect him for the fact he stood up for his own opinion. But here's the thing. We don't have a better racing product right now in the NASCAR Cup Series, and I really think that there's a lot of changes that need to be made. A lot of drivers like Dale Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, I think Bubba Wallace has talked about it. Other drivers have been frustrated with how this car races. Chris Bell's another one that's been frustrated about the racing product in the sport. To me, there's a lot that needs to be changed, and while I'll say that, yeah, the racing's different and we got new changes to the car, the new technology has made the racing not better overall. So I really hope that kind of helps Kyle Petty understand where our frustration is. There's a lot of frustration from the fan base, and I think a lot needs to be changed with the racing product for it to get better. Hopefully it can change, but I'm not sure it will change for the better. And NASCAR needs to get some things changed though with this car going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dover Motor Speedway. Now, we talked about this story on the channel earlier this evening, but Jordan Bianchi dropped an absolute bombshell on Dover Motor Speedway. According to what he has heard over the last couple weeks, it sounds like Dover Motor Speedway could be hosting the All-Star race in 2026 and replacing North Wilkesboro as the All-Star race for 2026. This would mean that for the first time since 1969, Dover will not host a points-paying event if this comes true. So what does this mean for North Wilkesboro Speedway? Well, according to what Jordan Bianchi has reported, this would open up the opportunity for North Wilkesboro to get a points-paying race in 2026. There has been a lot of talk and speculation in the last couple weeks, according to what Dale Jr. has reported, that he has heard that North Wilkesboro may end up getting a points-paying race in 2026 and not the All-Star race next year. Obviously, this is definitely a major shot because of the track that is being chosen as the All-Star race for 2026. Let's talk about Dover for a second. I talked about this a little bit on the channel. Didn't really show a lot of criticism toward that video, so I was trying to present the facts at that point. But why Dover of all racetracks? I really have never been the biggest fan of Dover, at least in recent years. It hasn't lived up to hype in any of the series. The Xfinity Series product has not been good there, and the Xfinity Series generally puts on the best product in NASCAR when the Xfinity Series can't put on a great show consistently there. That should tell you everything you need to know about the track itself. But the next-gen car has raced terrible at Dover. At least it's been terrible when it comes to dirty air. It just isn't good for a track like this. You know what track would be a lot better for hosting the All-Star race? Gee, a track that's in the Charlotte area that's been putting on really good shows with the next-gen car and with the intermediate package. Charlotte Motor Speedway. That track would make a lot more sense to host it than Dover. I really don't understand why we're moving the All-Star race to Dover. I get SMI wants to make decisions, and my best guess is they're trying to keep this track on the schedule because there is a lot of uncertainty around Dover. They keep moving this date around, it seems like every year now at this point, and they're still having weather issues and rain issues at this point. And attendance, from what I know, was down this year in 2025 compared to 2024. They've had a lot of attendance issues, and that's another thing that you got to kind of look at this point. One of the reasons why I think that we've been seeing issues with Dover. I can't fully grasp why Dover Motor Speedway, of all tracks, is likely going to host the All-Stars. And while this has not been officially announced, when you have Jordan Bianchi and Jeff Gluck reporting on this, I think then there's a lot of truth and a lot of facts to the rumors that are coming out at this point. I just can't understand Dover. This is probably one of the worst tracks to host an All-Star race. I think North Wilkesboro is more fit for it at this point. Now, that being said, like I mentioned, North Wilkesboro will get a points-paying race, and I would have to think that North Wilkesboro is going to be on the same weekend as where Dover's at, which I think is around that July 20th, 21st, around my mother's birthday, is kind of where I would expect that it would likely take place. I'm definitely a fan of North Wilkesboro getting a points-paying race, and I think it should get a points-paying race. I just can't see why that Dover is the one that sacrifices, but I think North Wilkesboro getting a points-paying race is absolutely justified at this point. Now, in regards to the 2026 schedule, I've heard rumors about when it might get released. It sounds like it could be coming out sometime next week. Jordan Bianchi did confirm that. I've heard from a source or a couple that have said that basically it sounds like that's what's the plan right now, is the schedule might be coming out. Chicago is expected to be on the schedule. Mexico's probably going to be out. Daytona 500 date has been confirmed at this point. Coke 600 date has been confirmed. We know that Homestead's going to host the season finale and a rotation starting next year. And there's some other big things that are going to be coming for 2026, including in the lower series as well. Also, we're going to Naval Base Coronado in San Diego next year. And there's some other big things that I know that are in the works for the 2026 schedule. I don't know what the future of like Lime Rock and Watkins Glen is going to be for the Craftsman Truck Series, but going back to Dover, this is definitely shocking and surprising. This is something they can easily do, though, and I think there's some big stuff that's going to be in the works. Obviously, also Chicago Street Course is no longer on there, so people like Brock Feeney, Cam Waters, and Will Brown and all those guys can't have the opportunity to race at that track in the future. Nonetheless, some really big news here for sure, though. This is definitely a big surprise for sure that Dover won't be on the schedule next year. I can't fully understand it in some way, shape, or form, but I get what they're trying to do, keep Dover on the schedule long term. I don't see it surviving much longer, to be honest, at this rate with all the uncertainty, all the unknowns. I worry about the long-term future of Dover, and I think North Wilkesboro will get that points-paying race very, very soon for next year. Now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Spire Motorsports. Now, Spire Motorsports owner Jeff Dickerson was on Sirius XM NASCAR radio yesterday and revealed some very interesting information in regards to 2026 and some bombs around the driver lineup for 2026 as well. He first spoke on the Craftsman Truck Series program for 2026. He did reveal right now they are planning to have 3 trucks for the remainder of 2025. Of course, we know Roger Kroof will drive the 71 truck and will compete for a Truck Series championship. The 07 truck, though, no longer exists in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for the remainder of the season. The 77 will be driven by Corey LaJoie. Andres Perez no longer drives for the team, and the 7 truck will remain for the remainder of the season as well, with drivers rotating throughout the year and Corey Day making a couple starts in that truck for the remainder of the year. Now, there's obviously been a lot of rumors and speculation about Spire Motorsports maybe not having a Truck Series program in 2026 and a potential possibly moving up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. Now, Bob Pox and other people in the industry have denied the rumor that Spire Motorsports is going to the Xfinity Series in 2026, but Jeff Dickerson said that we don't really want to be out of the Truck Series altogether. There is a chance that that could happen for 2026, but we'll likely stay in the Truck Series in 2026 as well. I would expect Spire Motorsports more than likely going into the 2026 year to probably have 3 trucks for next season. I would expect that Roger Kroof is going to stay in the number 71 truck next year in 2026. While I think it'd be cool for Roger to get promoted to the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year, I think he's not fully ready to make that full-on jump yet at this point. So I think Roger is going to stay in the Craftsman Truck Series for one more year and one more season. I think they'll have a second full-time truck for another driver, and I think that driver's actually going to be Brendan Butterbean Queen. Brendan Butterbean Queen has been high up in the Pinnacle Racing Group. A lot of people are very high on Brendan. He's been extremely dominant in the ARCA Series this year. He has already 5 wins, I believe, so far this year, and I think he's going to be a major factor to win the championship this year. And I know he wasn't amazing at IRP, but of course it was in the 07 truck, which struggled with drivers like Kyle Larson. Yes, he got a win, but struggled a bit. Michael McDowell, Kyle Busch, BJ McLeod, Patrick Emmerling, other drivers who drove in the 07 have not run very, very well in that truck, and I think it's 07 truck more than anything else, along with Corey LaJoie as well. And then I think they're going to have an all-star truck for people like Corey Day, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, all the good stuff. So I think they'll have 3 trucks. I don't think they're going to get out of the truck series next year. Could they go Xfinity? Maybe, but I don't expect that to happen at this point for them going into 2026. The other big thing is Justin Haley. He spoke about Justin Haley's future. Dustin Long did a really good article around this as well, because there's been a lot of talk and a lot of chatter that Justin Haley will not return to the Spire Motorsports team in 2026. Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi noted in the most recent Silly Season article, they noted there's been a lot of talk and a lot of chatter, and apparently it's not just a hot seat, but it's a scorching hot seat about Justin Haley maybe being out of Spire Motorsports at the end of the year and the end of the season. And he did say that there's a lot of pressure on the organization to perform and run a lot better currently at the moment. They were proud of Justin Haley's performance over at Spire Motorsports at Watkins Glen, where he qualified very, very well. Well, not well, but he practiced very, very well and showed some good pace and speed. Look, has Justin Haley worked out very, very well in the number 7 car so far this year? No, it's not been a great season so far for Justin Haley, but we all got to remember a couple big things. Number 1, we saw the crew chief get fired. 9 races in the year. Rodney Childers. Daniel Cheddar Smith, the original car chief of the team. He got let go from the program and moved over to Joe Gibbs Racing. And the pit crew by like race 6 or 7 of the season was moved over to work with Kyle Larson for the remainder of the year. So while yes, Justin Haley has performed very well, it's not all on Justin Haley, the performance being bad. At 7 truck wasn't not amazing with Corey LaJoie, and I think a lot of that is a common denominator of Ryan Sparks. And no disrespect to Ryan Sparks, but Ryan Sparks is not on the same level as Rodney Childers has been. So I think if they had a better crew chief, like a Chris Lawson, for example, or let's say Matt Milton, the Matt guy who worked over at the program of Roush for many, many years, I would think he would have been a much better choice to be the crew chief for that program. Or Matt McCall, that's who it was. I think he'd been a better crew chief for that car at this point over Brian Sparks. So for Justin Haley, I think he should get another season with the team because I don't think he's been given a fair shake at this point. But let's say they get rid of Justin Haley. Who are the potential candidates? I think there's 2 at this point. One of those is Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez is the number 1 free agent in the Cup Series currently at the moment of the very low bar of free agents we have right now. And Daniel Suarez's name hasn't mentioned as a possibility for the 7. He does bring funding and sponsorship to the table, which would help him get the seat. The problem is Spire Motorsports, they don't really need funding compared to other organizations because of the GameBridge sponsorship. And number 2, from what some people said, he's not an upgrade over Justin Haley, and he just barely now got ahead of Justin Haley in the points. So I don't personally think he would be an upgrade over Justin Haley. And while I think it'd be cool for Suarez to stay in Cup next year, I don't think that he would be my choice for that ride at this point. The other driver that many have speculated is Corey Heim. I know the Daily Downforce, and take it with a grain of salt at this point, but Daily Downforce has noted that they've heard a potential possibility of Corey Heim maybe being a candidate for that 7 car. And if I had to choose between Corey Heim and Justin Haley, I'm going to go with Corey Heim at this point. But I've been hearing rumors around Justin Haley being out of the program. And again, I just think that you got to give him one more season in this car. I think it makes more sense for him to have one more year. Plus, I don't think there's anybody else better outside of Corey Heim at this point. So I think giving him another year and another opportunity to try to prove himself, I think that's the most important thing for Haley. I don't think it's fair to Justin Haley to lose his seat. And I think it would be a bad call on their end if they get rid of Justin Haley at this point. But the fact that there's talk about it tells me there might be some truth around the rumors. And again, it'd be disappointing if he doesn't get to keep his seat. Because unless you put Corey Heim in that car, I don't see there being an upgrade. Because we know that Tricon's making changes, most likely Katie Honeycutt going to 11 next year. I just think it would be a bad decision to move Justin Haley, and I don't think it'd be the best call for the team if they got rid of him at this point, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Coll Racing. Now, over the course of the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of chatter and a lot of rumors about the potential Dodge and Ram team that could be coming into the Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. And one of the teams that's been heavily linked over to going to Ram in 2026 is none other than Coll Racing. Now, a couple weeks back, Chris Rice denied the rumors on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, but it seems like those rumors are once again picking up for 2026. And according to Adam Stern, Amid NASCAR industry rumors that Kaulig is a potential option for Ram, Chris Rice says everyone has talked to Ram in NASCAR about going over there in 2026. And he basically did confirm on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, talking to Mike Bagley as well, and Pete Pasone as well, that they are definitely in some talks and conversations about the potentially going over to Ram in 2026. This is absolutely major news right here, because we obviously haven't been able to figure out who is going to be the Ram team for the 2026 year. Sure, we've heard rumors about Rhett Jones Racing being a potential candidate for Cletus McFarland to be the driver, but Cletus has come out and denied the rumors. And even Tim Kuklanis, who is the guy who's helping out Dodge in a major way, come into the sport, and Ram come back into sport, he's kind of denied the rumors as well about Cletus coming in. So Rhett Jones, I'm not sure, though I've heard the team as a potential possibility. I mentioned Niss Motorsports. Niss Motorsports has been a team that's been rumored over there, but they've come out and denied and said, no, we're not going over there at the moment. That could be the announcement that's coming out later today, but I don't think that's the team that's going to be going over to the Dodge and Ram program in 2026. Someone mentioned GMS Racing coming back, and GMS Racing would actually be a very interesting team that could come in. They have a fabrication group now, and GMS would make a lot of sense to go over there and be the team, so they could be a potential possibility. But I think if you want your team to have a foot to get in the Cup Series in the future, Coll Racing makes the most sense for a couple reasons. Number one, Coll Racing is struggling with Chevrolet currently at the moment. They're part of the ECR branding, and ECR and the ECR engines in particular, they're not running very well currently at the moment right now. And I think for Kaulig, plus there's been some turmoil happening over there and the uncertainty around the organization and team, I think Kaulig would make the most sense to go to Ram, because they would get a lot of support. They'd be effective immediately the number one Dodge team, and they probably could get some people involved in that program. So I think Coll Racing would make a ton of sense to go over there to Ram. The fact that we keep hearing rumors about it, I think there's a lot of truth to these rumors at this point. This could be the link to that Spire rumor we talked about with their truck program as well. That could potentially be a major possibility there. But I don't think this will stop there, because this could lead a gateway to potential possibly also of Kaulig Racing having them in their Cup program in 2027, because Ram has been absolutely open to having a Cup program by the 2027 season. And Kaulig Racing could be that flagship team that gets the Dodge stuff in 2026-27, which could lead to them being the number one team. However, I don't think they're going to be the only team that is going to switch over to Dodge if they go Cup Series racing in 2027. I think that there's one team that is tracking, and they might be bringing Dodge in the house in 2027. Talking about Trackhouse Racing, obviously. Trackhouse Racing is a team that I think is absolutely wants to be very, very bold. And while they are a top Chevrolet team, they're definitely higher up on the totem pole than Kaulig Racing is. They're not as high as Hendrick Motorsports, and Spire Motorsports definitely caught up in performance at times to Trackhouse Racing. Sure, Shane Gisbergen has been dominant on the road course, and Connor Zolch certainly, who is a big name in the Chevy pipeline, in the Chevy camp as well. They certainly are very, very high on him, but Connor Zolch may down the road end up going to Hendrick Motorsports anyways, and may not be with Trackhouse Racing for the long term, as I think a team is going to try to poach Connor here very, very soon. May go to another series. Who knows at this point? But I think that Trackhouse Racing, especially with how big and how bold they've been with some of the things they've done over the years, whether it's music, bringing Pitbull in, and getting a lot of the big sponsors they've been able to bring in, and some of the big things, the innovations they've done, like going to MotoGP, that team makes a lot of sense to me, switching over to Ram along with Coll Racing. But if Coll Racing goes to Ram, that's going to be a big deal. And then the big question you have to ask is who's going to drive for this team then? Because there's a lot of talk about Ty Dillon signing a contract extension with the team. Could he go down to the Truck Series and race for Ram? That is a possibility, but I have to think that he is going to stick around and stay in the Cup Series, because, like I said, there's a lot of talk he is going to sign a contract extension with Coll Racing, and I think he would be the most likely candidate to get that extension with that team and program next year. What about other people? And what about Allmendinger? Allmendinger saying in the Cup Series next year, so that's been confirmed. And some will say, well, what about maybe Coll Racing downsizing their Xfinity program? Well, he did mention they're going to have 2 cars next year in Xfinity more than likely. My best guess is that they're going to keep the 2 current full-time drivers of Christian Eckes and Daniel Dye. That would make the most sense at this point. Both have shown some flashes this year at times, so I think both have earned the right an opportunity to stick around with the Coll Racing team at least for one more year in season. But for Kaulig to make the move, it would make a ton of sense. The team is not really making big moves at Chevrolet. I think going down and running in the lower series, racing in the truck series, and having a chance, because the truck series is going to be losing one of their big bright stars potentially with Corey Heim moving up next year. And there's other drivers that could be on the move in the future, like Gio Ruggiero and Brent Cruz, who might be full-time Xfinity racing next year, JGR. I think you got to find a way to get a team in there that can help the purses. And Coll Racing's been picking up some big sponsors as of late, and Ty Norris can help in a pretty big way as well, get that up and running. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens with the Coll Racing program, but the fact that we keep hearing rumors and reports tells there's a lot of credibility toward it. I think there's a very good chance and possibility that you are going to see Coll Racing switch over to Dodge in the Cup Series in the future, along with maybe like Trackhouse as well. And I think there's a very big possibility that they are going to be going to Ram in the Truck Series in 2026. So, that is today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well, and support me on all my channels. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We're going to have some other content dropping this week. We're going to, of course, have the reactions to Cup Series qualifying from Richmond. We'll also have the Truck Series race review as well. Then on Saturday, we'll have the Cup Series race review along with the starting lineup video for the Cup race. And then on Sunday, I'm going to have my 2026 NASCAR Cup silly season predictions, my updated ones. I will, of course, have my Xfinity silly season predictions coming out soon as well for 2026. And then, of course, I will have some other content dropping as well. We're going to have probably the schedule coming out this week, it sounds like. So expect a reaction to the schedule probably Tuesday, and some other big content that's in the works as well. We got content coming out, people like Haley Deegan, Shaman Ginsburg, and Carl Kurt Busch, Cobblish, Boas, Ross, St. Sheldon, Creed, Sam Mayer, Will Brown, Cam Waters, Brock Feeney, Jack Perkins, as we head to Portland next week as well, which is exciting. And other big names like Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Connor Zillis, Junior Motorsports, injuries, all that kind of stuff we'll talk about on the channel coming days and weeks with Clay's Farm Dodge Ram as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more awesome NASCAR content, but Chase like Ryan Priest, Kyle Larson too. So I'll see you guys there for more great content. Take care, everybody.